Hey everyone, this is Seth with Food Challenge News. Welcome back to another podcast interview. Today I'm joined by Naader Reda, also known as Freak Eating. How you doing today, Naader?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's begin with your expansive career in education. What inspired you to make a career out of education, and how did you first get involved in working with students?
Well, I had some very inspirational teachers when I was in high school. And when I was in college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very interested in history and political science, but I wasn't sure what career that would lead me into. So I thought about what my teachers, had done for me. And I kind of wondered if, I could make a similar career. I enjoyed, I still enjoy history. I enjoy reading it. So I just went down that path, and then I went and spoke with my old high school teachers who just gave me advice for how to approach the career. And I just went into the student teaching program, and that was my first real experience of working with students. And I got a real taste because I didn't remember. I kind of misremembered what high school was like. I thought I remembered the kids being a lot more mature, and that wasn't the case. It was a very difficult experience my first couple of years.
And around what year was that?
So I graduated from the student teaching program in May of 2008.
And then what would eventually compel you to make the jump from teacher to high school administrator?
Oh, so in the last couple of years, an opportunity opened up in the school I work for with a virtual curriculum program we have where teachers are teaching live over Zoom. And as much as I enjoy being a teacher and working with kids, I got to a point where I just wondered, what would it be like to work with other teachers? I've always enjoyed observing other teachers to kind of see how they do things, because we all have our own strengths and our weaknesses and things we can work on. And it's actually been extremely rewarding to kind of help other teachers who are new, especially the ones who are new to teaching over Zoom. I feel like during the pandemic, when we made a lot of the transitions over to doing things over Zoom, doing things live in a virtual setting, that I did very well. I did very well connecting with students, even though, we weren't in the same place. And I feel that those were things that I was able to help other new teachers to the profession who weren't so adjusted to working over a camera.
And what's the main difference between the two, teacher and high school administrator?
Well, when you're a high school administrator, you spend far less time with students. You spend more time with teachers, talking to teachers. The kids look at you differently, that's for sure. They see you as much more of an authority, which is a very interesting thing because I don't see myself as an authority. So it's a very unique hat to wear. Even the teachers look to me as an authority, which is also not something I'm used to. I'm not used to being in a position of authority. So quite often when there's things that need to be done, they need my approval or they'll ask for my opinion about something. And it's a much different spot to be in.
Did it take you a while to get settled into that role once you became an administrator?
Yes, it did take me a while to get used to this role, especially now I'm developing ideas that are not just going to impact what students are doing, but what other staff are doing. And I have to try to find things that are going to benefit students as a whole. When you're just in your classroom or with your students, your zone of impact is very small. Now, people are paying attention to things that I'm saying. A lot of people are paying attention. So I have to kind of take more care with some of the wording, some of the emails I send and things of that sort.
What's one of the biggest challenges you faced as an educator over your career, and how did you overcome it?
One of the biggest challenges I've faced as an educator is trying to get through to students who don't see education as valuable or who come from backgrounds where they don't have a lot of at-home support. So, I worked in a lot of environments that were independent study or homeschooling, and you get to develop more one-on-one relationships with the students. And ironically, this is where, when students would learn about my hobby, competitive eating, it would humanize me to them, and they became a lot more interested in in some of the things I had to say, and they could see, hey, there is a world outside of school, and just because you're a teacher, you have a quote unquote regular job, you could still be a fun person. Adults aren't all boring. And sometimes, just to go back, that personal connection that sometimes some teachers can develop with students, that's a huge motivating factor. There are some kids, I've had some kids, and they told me that they didn't like any of their teachers. And they said that the teachers they had in the past discouraged them. And some of them said that I was the only teacher they had that actually made them feel good about themselves. It's honestly, it's sad to me when, some of these kids have gone from school to school and they just felt that their teachers didn't care for them. I mean, it's a very hard thing to hear from a kid, from someone who is still, they're still children, they're still growing up, and to feel that, there might not be many adults who care about them is a very hard thing to hear.
And so moving on to the more competitive eating side of things, you've been taking on food challenges and eating contests for many, many years now. What sparked your interest in them originally?
What sparked my interest in competitive eating was actually pretty random. I remember seeing news stories about Joey Chestnut winning this wing eating contest, or Kobayashi winning the Nathan's hot dog championship. And I had some coworkers at the time who we would go to work. After work, we would go to eat at some restaurants, and they noticed I could eat more than they would. And so one of them kind of said, "Hey, have you ever thought about joining an eating contest?" And it was something I never considered. Not at all. And there was a local restaurant near where we worked. It was called La Casa Garcia. It's a Mexican restaurant in Orange County, and they had a 5-pound burrito on the menu. And it was one of those things where if you could eat the whole thing in one sitting, it would be free. And we kept talking about it, and one night I finally went, and I had never eaten such a large portion of food before. I realized that I'd eaten large meals, but nothing near 5 pounds. And it took a long time. I think it took me nearly an hour. And I thought my stomach was going to blow up by the time it was over. But when it was over and I was able to successfully eat the burrito, I thought, that was kind of fun. And then I started doing searches online, and I found a website called Eat Feats that had a database that listed other food challenges and had information about other competitive eaters. And that was the way I met the first couple friends I made in that community.
Yeah, and Eat Feats, they've been going, I believe, since 2005. It's a really cool website.
Oh yes. No, I remember finding it, and then I would go through the pages for different states, and there were lists of food challenges, and then I remember picking a couple off the list that were near me, and I would then find a weekend every so often, and it wasn't often. I believe after that first challenge, it probably took me another 5 or 6 months to decide to try another one. So it was definitely not a commitment thing. It was definitely, if the opportunity comes up, I'll try another one. But I did a couple, and then somebody contacted me, another eater. I didn't know who he was. His name was Damon Wells. And he wanted to put together a team of 7 or 8 eaters to try this enormous pizza in LA at Big Mama's and Papa's Pizzeria. And that meetup was really the start of me kind of plugging into the wider community.
Yeah, we actually wrote about that challenge a couple of years ago. It's a really cool challenge, and I also wanted to ask you about that. How was that, taking that on with a talented team of eaters?
Well, that very first time we did the challenge in, I believe it was 2009, maybe 2008. It was a long time ago. We didn't succeed. We came very close, but we did not succeed. And I mean, this was my first time meeting some people that were part of Major League Eating. I remember that's where I met Kevin Ross. I never knew who he was. And to me, he was kind of a celebrity because he was on this Major League Eating roster of ranked, eaters. I remember also meeting Ryan McKillop. There were a few others, but these guys were like celebrities to me. And what I remember is, even though I couldn't eat as fast as they could, they were impressed by how much I could eat overall. Like that was something that came away with, and I realized, that I wasn't usual. The amounts of food I could eat, if I pushed myself, was definitely above average. And even though they didn't like take me under their wing or anything necessarily, some of them, especially Kevin, we developed a friendship, and over the years, we would do challenges together and go to restaurants, and that's where I learned. That's where I got better at it. I got better at doing challenges, just by trying.
And then did you start using strategies after a while, or did you just jump right into it?
Well, one of the strategies I learned early on, which is now famous, that people were much more tight-lipped, but it was, drinking, water or Gatorade to stretch your stomach. And it's interesting, this may seem like ancient now, but back in those days in 2009, 2010, eaters were very secretive about their methods. Many of the people that are very like relevant today weren't even on the scene. And they would not share their secrets too easily. And they would tell me some vague things like, well, you have to learn to swallow larger portions. You have to, eat more quickly. Very, very, very secretive, to be honest with you, in that time. But I learned on my own, basically, what size of a bite what I believe was safe to swallow. And of course, that is the one aspect of my, I guess, competitive eating journey. I never became as fast as some of my peers, but I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed participating.
So how has this scene evolved? Because, like you said, that not everyone was willing to always, share certain strategies and or secrets, if someone would like to call them that. How is it today, as far as like the food challenge scene?
Well, in those early days, a lot of it was, it was league based. You had Major League Eating, you had the American Independent Competitive Eating League, and then you sort of had like the pure independents who were doing food challenges at restaurants. I mean, as time went on, I feel, and especially as people would start doing things on the internet, on YouTube, I think we have seen a kind of a development and evolution where now everybody is a content creator. Everybody's on the internet. And I think the drive to have a social media, standing, a social media career, I think that's today is now one of the major motivations for why some people do challenges at all. I feel a lot of us went from doing challenges for fun to trying to make a career out of it, if that makes sense, a social media career. Sometimes in conversation with friends, current day competitive eaters who are frustrated, that they're not able to make more of a mark, on their, if it's TikTok or YouTube. I'll ask them, do you primarily see yourself as a competitive eater or as a content creator, influencer? Because there's different ways of approaching things. If your true love is competitive eating, you might do things a little bit differently than someone who is just trying to, ride the algorithm or, catch the eyes, hook people in with, clickbait, if you will.
So you're saying it's about your priorities and how you want to shape your content?
Oh, absolutely. I've heard, that, some competitive eaters, when they kind of analyze the performance of their YouTube channel, they'll notice, for example, that dessert challenges don't do well or ice cream challenges don't do well. So they'll do less of those. So that's one way that it sort of, it influences their creation decisions. Whereas, like, if you're just purely in it for the joy of competitive eating, you'll go and do any challenge. You would just go and do them because you enjoy them.
Right.
And I know that does have some impact. There's a lot of people who they'll make sure not to do too many like burgers in a row or pizzas in a row. Those are also other decisions so that your audience has more of a variety. So the creation pressure, the pressure to stand out, it has a major impact on what some people do on their social media.
And so what year did you start on YouTube, and how did you come up with the name Freak Eating?
So I started, I believe, in the year 2011. I ended up changing. I had to start the channel because I had a problem with some videos where the channel got hacked. I don't remember exactly. That was a lot. But I restarted Freak Eating in 2012. And so some of my friends from high school were joking with me because they knew it wasn't just that I like to eat a lot of food, but I like to try different things and try some offbeat foods. So they came up with the name Freak Eater, trying to come up with a name for someone who enjoyed eating strange foods, but a name that could fit in a bumper sticker, a license plate. And one of my friends actually tried to buy me a custom license plate, Freak 8R, to kind of use the number 8 to represent eat. But the DMV here in California ruled that was an offensive license plate, so it didn't happen. I got a formal letter from the DMV saying, thank you for your application, but this name is considered offensive, the word freak and so on. And of course, at the time, I was working with the YouTube channel Reckless Eating. And so I kind of thought if I made the channel name Freak Eating, it would parallel with Reckless Eating. Kind of a very easy transition. Of course, we worked together a lot, so it was just kind of rolled off your tongue, check out Reckless Eating, check out Freak Eating. I thought that we would kind of go well together that way.
Yeah, they sound very similar, but also different enough. But yeah, I see your thinking there. And so can you give me the best and worst experience throughout all of your years of food challenges?
All right. The worst are always, I think, easier in a sense because the horrible feelings afterwards. When I attempted the record for the most Carolina Reaper peppers eaten in a minute, that was my absolute worst experience in competitive eating. So I had horrible stomach cramps for about a day and a half. And the stomach cramps from Reapers are interesting because it runs in cycles, and you can even take dairy, you can take all of the precautions and things, and it still hurts, it still burns. And I remember after attempting the record on stage, even the walk back to my car was pretty bad. I had to stop periodically just to lay down. And that, you're at these expos and fairs, and it's quite a distance from the stage to where the cars are. And so people who recognize me from the stage would stop me and they say, "Hey, you did a great job out there." It was just really, really bad. Not something I recommend to anybody, really. I know even people who consider themselves to be, skilled pepper eaters, they suffer pretty badly with those peppers. I mean, as far as my best experiences in competitive eating, I would have to say probably one of my best was, I think, when I won the Farrell's Ice Cream Eating Championship in 2013. That was a very, very fun contest. Ice cream is one of my favorite foods in general and one of my favorite contest foods. It was very special to me because I'd helped the company put together that contest. The prior year in 2012, it was a very big event. We had a lot of eaters who came from Southern California. We even had a couple from Las Vegas. It was about as star-studded as you could also almost hope for, considering who was eating in Southern California at the time. And I'd finished second place the first year, which was a big result for me at that time. First place was Damon Wells, who was a very good eater. He was also the fellow who had kind of reached out to me to build that team for the Big Mama's and Papa's Pizza. But the second year that the contest was held in 2013, I did win. I won the contest overall, and I got a very nice trophy, very nice first place trophy for that event, and it's actually still up on my kind of up on the mantle over here at home.
That's really cool. So it's like a personal achievement, and it's immortalized now on your mantle.
Oh yes, absolutely, and it's bittersweet because Farrell's went out of business. So they're done, wrapped up as a business, which is sad because I know at one point Farrell's were spread all around at least the state, if not the country, here in California. I know my mom told me when they were little kids, she and my aunts would go there for parties and things. So yeah, kind of a cool family memory too to kind of hook in with the contest.
Yeah, it's unfortunate there. Did you say that just that one location is closed, or they're all closed?
Oh no, they're all closed. The restaurant was all over the place, a few decades ago, and then they sort of had a resurgence in the 2010s. I think there was an investor or investing firm that wanted to rejuvenate the brand, and they spread. There were 6 or 7 locations in California, and then they just kind of collapsed. There was just no. They weren't a budget restaurant, which was I think part of the problem. For a place that served mostly like ice cream and diner food, they had a higher price point, and that does not help. That does not make business easy.
Did it hurt your heart when you heard about them closing?
Oh yes, it made me a little sad. This was a place I'd visited many times. For several years, I had attended the contest that they would host. I would help the marketing team there with TV interviews in the morning. I'd come on the morning, help them on the the KTLA morning news, and it was a fun event. They would develop several categories. They had like parent and child division. They had a women's contest, a men's contest. They would have team contests. They built it up into a lot of fun. Something that I didn't even have as a vision. I just thought it'd be kind of cool if they would do a contest at all. They really took it somewhere, and it was sad to just see it all go away. In addition to just the restaurant itself, because we don't have a lot of family centric restaurants, and I felt that Farrell's was such a restaurant.
Do you think they'll ever make a comeback?
I think there's a chance. A lot of people have very fond memories. Sometimes when I'll post a video about an ice cream sundae, I'll get a comment from someone saying this reminds me of Farrell's. So there's still a lot of memory, not just among people my age, but even in the older generations. Like there's a lot of people out there who I think they would love to see Farrell's make a comeback. But as to what's happening in the investment world, business world, I have no idea. But I would love to see it.
I remember that you shared a concerning story online one time about a choking incident during an eating contest. Can you walk us through that experience and the tense moments when you realized something was wrong, and how did you end up getting help?
Okay, yes, I remember that one well. So that was the last time that one of those Kobayashi taco challenges was held at one of the Gringo Bandito contests, which is an amazing venue. It's an amazing venue to be a part of, to go on with other competitive eaters and do world-class competitive eaters and do a contest right before the Offspring takes the stage to play their music. So in that last contest, it was pre-COVID, 2018 or 17, it had to be one of those 2 years. And I was pushing myself very hard. Year after year, I would improve slightly, and there I was on stage there, just trying to bite, chew, and swallow those tacos as fast as I could. I was on an excellent pace, and then all of a sudden, I had noticed that what I'd swallowed hadn't quite gone down, and it was a very strange experience. I couldn't really explain it, but suddenly I felt like I couldn't breathe. It's an unmistakable sensation, when you're choking. I also could not make sound. I couldn't talk. I couldn't even cough. And I realized that I was having a problem at this point. I of course, I knew there's EMTs on stage, to the sides of the stage, and so I made, the international symbol for choking there, hands at the throat, trying to get people's attention. Now, ironically, it's a very loud environment, very chaotic, high energy environment, and you have, some of the best eaters in the world here. You got Molly Schuyler, you had Kobayashi, you had Dan Kennedy, and a few others there. So everybody's paying attention to all the competition. it took me a few more seconds than I would have liked for someone to actually notice. There were some other eaters near me who noticed that I was having trouble. There were some contest officials noticing I was having trouble, but they were trying to locate an EMT. And in this melee here, I was also starting to see the world kind of go black. I was also starting to kind of, I guess, lose consciousness. And at this moment, there was someone there from the company record setter who was sort of there to observe and see if they could, record a world record. They wore these big yellow suits, and so this fellow decided to just step in. He stepped in and gave me the Heimlich. I am very grateful that he did. And yeah, he gave a couple of those thrusts, and the food came out. And I got to live another day. Ironically, I was not disqualified from the contest, and one of the officials asked if I wanted to continue. I said no. I think I've done my share of tempting fate today. I'll just leave it where it is.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear that everything worked out, and I'm sure that was pretty terrifying. And how did that change it for future contests for you? Is there anything you did differently based on that incident?
Well, yes. To be honest with you, it has changed my outlook entirely especially on eating. I am not able to really push myself to eat and swallow as quickly as I did after that incident. For the first couple days, few weeks actually afterward, I began to become very aware. You can choke on just about any bite of food. You never know. It took me a few weeks to finally just adjust and realize, no, I'll be fine. I've always eaten, and I'll be fine. I just need to take that event for what it was, that I was trying to eat as quickly as possible, just the way that other eaters eat, where you're trying to shovel things down, use liquid to force food down, and I went too fast. But overall, at the mental level, and I have never been able to push myself as hard as I was, and that's why my eating style since then has gone in a more of a casual direction. I just tend not to eat as quickly as I did back in those days. And even then I wasn't incredibly fast, but I just can't get myself to do it because that sensation, the choking sensation, is absolutely terrifying.
What's one lesson you've learned after all these years of participating in food challenges and competitive eating?
I think one of the lessons I've learned is that the most important thing from this endeavor are the friends you make, just the fun that you have. I mean, ultimately, nothing that we do is all that serious. No one's going to remember us. No one's going to remember us for how many tacos we ate, or how many burgers we ate. But you make a lot of friends. Some of my best friends that I have today are made through the world of competitive eating, and these are people that, if it wasn't for competitive eating, I would have no reason to know them, because our lives are just so different. Our work that we do, our careers, there'd be no reason for us to have crossed paths. But, this very odd hobby has caused us to kind of get to know each other and to have a reason to be in each other's lives. And, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun traveling to places and finding these restaurants that you saw on TV, or restaurants that you've seen other competitive eaters visit.
So speaking of TV, you've actually made multiple appearances on television, including starring in an episode with Adam Richman on Man v Food Nation. What led up to you being on that episode on the show, and how was that experience overall for you?
Okay, so I had made no plans to appear on the show. One of my friends in the competitive eating world, her name is Jessica. She actually currently married to Kevin Ross. She had gone through all the steps. She had done everything, but the filming day conflicted with a final exam in college, which of course she was very bummed about. She tried to get them to reschedule to work anything out, and of course, unfortunately, the TV world, the Hollywood world, they're very sticky sometimes, and they refuse to budge. So she had actually kind of suggested that I would be a good replacement. And in kind of a backwards fashion, I had to then jump through all these hoops. Now I had to submit all these documentation that they wanted. They wanted me to come on and submit video of me speaking, answering questions, speaking into a camera, which was not very common for me at the time. I hadn't done much YouTube at the time. And so I basically had to go through the whole application process, but because they were looking now for a quick fix, they were looking for a solution because the person that they had selected was not going to be able to follow, not going to be able to participate. And so, we all made it work. I had to do a lot of rehearsing, get a lot better about talking into a camera. And when it was time for the big day, I drove about 3 hours from home to get to the film location in San Luis Obispo. And that was my first experience with television. And it was just interesting to see how much time just was sort of wasted. I didn't know what was going on. And I arrived there at 2-3 in the afternoon. We filmed a couple of those little scenes, like where I'm like punching the air or running along the sidewalk. And we didn't actually get to eat until like 10, 11 o'clock at night. I don't think anybody knows that from watching the episode, but it was the tail end of a very long day. And I was told that Adam Richman will act like your coach, even though you know more about eating than he does. Just humor him. That's what the producers told me, and I did that. Now, when I met Adam, honestly, he's a very nice guy, wonderful guy. I do have to say he was fascinated in me because I'm a teacher, and he also loves history. So we kind of chit-chatted that for a little bit on the side about that. Very nice fellow, and it was one of my most interesting experiences in the competitive eating realm was getting to do that TV show. And then I was told, even though it's TV, we don't fudge the eating challenge portion. This is done in one take. And there's no room for mistakes here. So just do your best, give it your all, and don't be nervous that you're on camera.
And now I have to ask, were you nervous about it?
Just a little bit. I mean, just a little bit. That was honestly, I had not eaten a giant steak sandwich like that before. And the bread was delicious bread, but it was not easy to get through. And so I do remember pouring the cup of au jus sauce all over the bread to kind of soften it. And, that's kind of some of the tricks that if when you've done enough food challenges, you learn I have to soften the bread, get the bread a little soggy. Adam, who was watching, was honestly stunned. He had never thought that would be a viable strategy. Just pour au jus all over the bread. It also helped to change the flavor of the bread, which was rather kind of plain, and when the spots where there was no sauce or no salsa. And it was a fascinating experience because the prospect of not finishing the challenge on camera, that's forever. People are going to be watching this episode for years potentially when it's on reruns, and you don't want people to remember, oh, this guy failed. So I was grateful that I was able to be successful.
How was the experience after you wrapped up filming?
Well, it was a nice experience. We all kind of gathered around. They filmed a mock press conference. I was exhausted at that time. And then I had to take a drive to the hotel they had set up for me. And the next day we went out to the beach area and we filmed a few more vignettes. And they let me know at that point. They said, if you had not succeeded at the challenge, you would not have been around for day 2 of filming. They wouldn't actually use those vignettes if I had failed the challenge, which was interesting. It was an interesting anecdote to kind of pick up, that the shape of the episode will vary depending on whether the challenger is successful or not.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Wow.
And a lot of the stuff that you see on the episode was kind of done on the fly. Like there's a scene where Adam Richman unfolds this treasure map. That map was actually hand drawn by Adam Richman himself. He pulled out like a piece of paper and crayons, and he drew that. He drew that himself.
Oh, wow.
An incredibly creative guy, and he does things that I think the general public, he has talents and skills that I think the general public is not even aware of.
And I think he still has TV shows, right? That he does like present day.
I believe he does. The shape of these shows has changed. I think it's good that he moved away from the big eating. It I'm getting older myself. I'm 41 right now, and these things hit differently as you get older. And he had gotten into it at an older age anyway, and I think it's probably a good call. He does great at reviewing restaurants and about describing food. And quite often when I make some of my long form videos, I'll harken back to Adam Richman and Bourdain, and in descriptions.
And so you've also taken on extreme challenges while appearing on the channel. You talked about them earlier, reckless eating. Some examples include Carolina Reaper extract. You once attempted a shaker of dry rub cracked peppercorn, and you also drank a little bit of beef bile. So what were some of the best and worst moments from your time with reckless eating?
I do have to say, you hit the nail on the head there with some of that highlight reel. It was interesting. The dry cracked pepper rub that I tried to eat, I believe that was pretty miserable because it was mostly salt. And from what I remember, I think the host, Matt Bell, actually stopped the challenge. He hadn't thought of it. And of course, we do things without thinking about it sometimes. And he said, that's way too much sodium. We're just going to have to call it. You should not eat that. And so stopped me. That was a bad one. Beef bile was pretty bad too. I understand it's used in some cuisine, Asian cuisine. It's used in small amounts. It's cooked properly. Because that was sort of the novelty of reckless eating, is they would take these foods from other cultures and eat them rather inappropriately. The same way that you can imagine somewhere else in the world, somebody just grabs a stick of butter. I mean, we eat butter regularly in American and British cuisine, but we don't eat it straight out of the package. And of course, in large doses, beef bile tastes horrible. It can also cause you an upset stomach. So I had a bad experience with that. Some of the hot sauces that they would have me sample led to some bad results. Beef bile is pretty bad. I also got the chance to try durian. The kind of stinky fruit. I did not have the negative experience a lot of people do. I mean, it's not the most pleasant tasting, but I did kind of enjoy the flavor. It's very different. But I believe, honestly, as you have said, that peppercorn rub was probably one of my worst experiences on reckless eating. I'm very grateful that Matt called time on that one before anything bad could happen.
But when I first watched that one, I was actually concerned about you because it looked like you were going to pass out.
Yes, I went through a lot of sudden feelings, and I'm grateful that smarter minds prevailed that day. As competitive eating at times is not the smartest endeavor.
And then so on the other side of it, what were some of your best moments with reckless eating?
There were some good ones, to be honest. I did really enjoy my very first video that I filmed with them, where I teamed up with Chris Reckless, and we drank 8 pounds of Hershey's chocolate syrup. It sounds terrible, but it honestly was not bad at all. It was tasty. It was delicious. It was not something that I would have ever thought to do or had a chance to do if I had stuck to strictly restaurant challenge eating. So reckless eating opened my eyes to really what was possible on YouTube, like that you can sort of create your own, choose your own adventures, if you will. That was a fun one. Getting to eat a 5-pound gummy bear, that was also a very, very fun, memorable experience I had with reckless eating. Don't recommend it for everybody, but it was a good one. That was another good one that I do treasure the memory of that, getting to do that. And we also were able, while I was with Reckless Eating, we managed to arrange a couple giant, Big Mamas and Papas Team Pizza challenges. We managed to kind of hook in with some competitive eaters. At one point, we were supposed to have Furious Pete working with us, who was a total legend in the YouTube food challenge world. Things didn't work out, but we still had many other competitive eaters who joined us, and it was a lot of fun. it was a lot of fun getting to go back to Big Mama's and Papa and pull out a couple of those giant 54 by 54 inch pizzas.
Are they still in business?
Yes, they are very much in business. They're growing. They have probably over a dozen locations in Southern California. Not every location can sell that, has the oven space for that giant pizza though. So you have to call around. I believe the one in either Burbank or Hollywood still sells that enormous pizza. And they bill it as the largest deliverable pizza in the world.
And then I've seen a lot of comments online, even to this day, in some cases, where you get praised for your reaction to surströmming. And I believe that was also with reckless eating, right?
Oh, yes. I don't know how I could forget that one. Yes. Oh, yes. Surströmming was a reckless eating endeavor. That was, Matt had spent so much time telling me about how awful this was, how terrible this was. And I think I just really braced myself for that moment. I think I would just totally braced myself, and I'd heard stories of how it smelled so bad that some people would puke just on smell. And he opened the can for me, and there were chunks and pieces, but I just literally just chugged it, and I can still hear Matt's voice shrieking in just disbelief, what do you mean you're finished? I still remember that. And, that was a very, very memorable experience. The food itself, it tasted terrible and smelled terrible. But it was a good moment. I think that's one of the defining reckless eating moments for me. I think, honestly, in some ways, it was probably a defining moment for reckless eating.
So moving to outside of YouTube, what are some of your other interests outside of food and education?
Well, for my other interests, I am very interested in running. I got involved in that, I believe, starting in 2016. And I sort of had the goal to see if I could, successfully run a half marathon, and I moved up to a full marathon. And I haven't run too many full marathons, but I do enjoy running for exercise. It's one of my major forms of exercise now. And I have a couple of half marathons scheduled this year. That's a major hobby of mine that I do enjoy doing. Among other things, I'm trying to think here, I do collect Funko Pops. I don't think that's something I talk a lot about. I do collect Funkos. I probably have more than I should. Especially I like pop, a lot of pop culture elements. So I'll collect Funko Pops from WWE superstars, from video game characters. I do like Simpsons characters. Huge fan of the Simpsons. I think we could probably consider the Simpsons to be one of my interests outside of food and education. Love watching the old episodes, and I have a lot of memorabilia from the Simpsons. In fact, T-shirts. I have a money bank with Homer Simpson. I have a Homer Simpson poster. The show I enjoyed, even though the show, frankly, has been on the air for too long.
I think that's really cool. And I think even one of your profile pictures of you at the Heart Attack Grill taking on, I believe, their challenge. There's an edited version that you'll post sometimes, or maybe you still have it up on your YouTube channel, where it's like from that universe, but it's you of The Simpsons.
Oh yes, that's right. How could I forget there? So I was contacted. There was a company called Turning Yellow where that was their service. They would take your picture, and turn you into a Simpsons character, basically, and that was what they provided to me. And of course, I still use that as a profile pic here and there. I would say, slightly outside the vein of food and restaurants, I do take an interest just in general photography now. That's something that I kind of had to learn. Photography, video editing, and things of that sort. People, it's not something we just knew. When I was in high school, we didn't have access to these devices and things that you have today. I constantly have to learn, and not only for competitive eating, but just for even my job. You have to learn technology. Zoom. You learn all the features of Zoom. That it kind of has a double purpose. I can do things, both in the education world and teaching, in food challenges, and just for general hobby. I have almost a year ago, my daughter was born, so I have one child, and the big joke is I went from taking pictures of food to taking pictures of my child. So a lot of my skills that I learned, in the one, I'm transferring over to the other. My wife accuses me of taking too many pictures, but I don't know if that's possible.
Well, especially with today's technology, like you were saying, I mean, it can be so easy to, like, they add up very quickly.
Oh, yes. No, I remember my parents, they had to rely on the rolls of film. I mean, you can only take so many pictures. Now with our phones, with our digital cameras, with cloud storage, we can take thousands of pictures, in the span of a year without even blinking.
So what does a typical day in Naader's life look like?
Well, a typical day in my life looks like getting up to go start the coffee maker, and then I turn on my computer to see what work emails I have received, because in my job, which, is, I am a high school administrator for our curriculum program, but I also support students in homeschooling. So I'll see if there's been any communication from parents regarding resources they need. And then I will, from there, if I need to respond or help any parents, I'll do that. And then I'll go and take a look and see what's going on in the social media world. So I kind of switch back and forth, which is one of the positive points of working from home. Is just a lot of flexibility. I can, you can do a couple different things at once, and then later on in the day, I'll often teach a class. I used to teach a cooking class, but this year I'm teaching a chess club. That meets twice a week. And I also tutor some students for the high school program that I work in. And then I'll also have some occasional staff meetings. And then when the day is over, might either go to the gym or go to the park for a run. I also cook food. That's a thing that I've always kind of done. I don't talk. It's never been a focus of my, the social media world for people to really know about. But I do cook quite a bit. And now that I have a baby, I also a large chunk of my day is spent, changing diapers, giving baths. So I'm highly involved in the parenting here. We change clothes, read stories. Try to think back to a lot of the things my parents did for me when I was little, and I realize I'm doing the same thing now for my daughter. And then I'll find some time to edit video. That's a typical day. I mean, there are atypical days, but I would say for a typical day, it probably looks very boring to outsiders.
What is your favorite food of all time?
It's a tough question. I would honestly say that sushi is my favorite food of all time. It's not something that is exactly affordable to eat regularly, and so it's kind of a treat. My wife and I will go for sushi once a month. That's sort of our promise to each other. We must eat sushi once a month.
And looking ahead to the future, do you see yourself continuing to upload videos centered around food, or are you thinking about maybe shifting gears and exploring new types of content with your channel?
I think for the time being, I will be posting food content. I do want to kind of tilt what I post, and so, there's a lot of us online who are doing big challenges, eating a lot, and I want to transition over a little bit into just more showcasing restaurants. Big food will still be something that is a feature, but honestly, I've eaten a lot, and there's moments where I think there's other people who do a better job of eating. Maybe I need to maybe I have some other talents that need to be honed a little more. And maybe use my skills to more showcase restaurants, showcase business owners. I do enjoy something I've started to do recently is I've started to interview restaurant owners, restaurant managers, and include those in my videos. And I really enjoy that, to be honest, getting to know the people behind the food, the people behind the kitchen, some of the people that we never get to see. And you get to learn what's special about the business, what the business means to the community. And I think food is just very fascinating. I think food is one of those things that brings everybody together. Everybody has an experience with eating, with food. I mean, I have also thought about, making content more in a educational direction, but it just seems so much more challenging to me because it's not something I've ever done before. So I think I'm safe with food.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience or anyone listening to this?
Well, I would say if you've ever had a dream of doing something, as long as it's legal, go for it. I remember when I started out, I remember the day when I had 20 subscribers on YouTube. I can still remember that day very well. And it didn't feel like I'd amount to anything, that this would lead anywhere. And then slowly but surely, people started to gravitate towards what I was uploading. I made acquaintances, and they helped to kind of push me and promote me on their platforms, on their channels, and I made a lot of friends. You never know what's possible until you really try, until you really put the effort and believe in yourself.
It's very well said, and that concludes our interview with Naader Reda, also known as Freak Eating. Naader, I'd like to thank you for coming on again.
Well, thank you so much. It was wonderful.
And we'll have all the links for Naader's channel in the description. And thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.